Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Sarah Sessions. This is Sarah with you, opening up for another beautiful conversation that feeds the soul and the mind towards better healing and balance in life. I have today with me Oana Stoian, which is my colleague for the workshop that's coming up. So we'll be talking about that a little bit at the end of our podcast and drop the handles. And I'd like to invite you to welcome Oana to this podcast. Welcome. She's a woman that I met years and years ago as a client of mine, and she's done some work on herself extensively in so many different realms and ways that I'm so proud of her. And thank you for still being around. After about 8 years, we've finally decided to connect on a podcast. We've lived together in Mexico and we've traveled together. And so if you know me a little bit and how I think, you'll know a little bit of Oana, as she is a perfect reflection of parts of me. Welcome, Oana. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction. I'm good. I'm happy we're doing this. It was a long time coming. And I can't wait to see where this discussion is going.
Fantastic. I like to allow discussions and conversations to happen as they come, because oftentimes that's where I become more curious about little bits and pieces. And there's so much that we can expand on. But I think that when we allow things to flow, it just comes out naturally. And that's what I want. I want to bring more of that beauty within us naturally out. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your healing journey and what that means to you.
Right. So let's start at the beginning. I'm Oana. I was born in Romania and we immigrated with my family in Montreal when I was around 10 years old. And I have lived in Montreal for around 20 years before I decided to move to Mexico in 2021. And since then, I'm a bit of a nomad, just traveling between my three home countries that I like to call. So Canada, Mexico, and Romania. About my healing journey, it started around when I was 24 years old. Although I think it started before, but I just consciously pinned it down at the age of 24 when I started noticing that some emotions would come up and they triggered some behaviors in me that I wasn't okay with. And I think that's when I realized that I was embodying some of the behaviors of my parents that triggered me. And so that's when I started to question, if I don't like that behavior in my mom or in my dad, or if it's difficult to deal with and I don't agree with it, why am I copying that? And that's when I started asking myself some questions. And my then naturopath came to me through word of mouth. And I went to see her after I tried seeing many doctors and explained to them that I had these mood swings. I started gaining weight. I wasn't okay in my own body. My energy levels were very low. What other symptoms did I have? My nutrition was so-so, and those doctors told me that I should get on the pill and that it would, balance my hormones. But something inside me told me that that is not the answer and that there's a deeper root cause to my not well-being. And so I started seeing my naturopath, and she introduced me to this concept of everything starts with your emotions. Your emotions trigger some behaviors in you and then some reactions. And as long as those emotions are welcomed and dealt with in a graceful and peaceful manner, all the other health issues will settle down. So that's when I started. And then years flew by and I was more curious about this. I love to learn by myself. And so I read a lot of books, went to holistic workshops, did a lot of research, and I really got more into this nutrition and psychology and somatics and NLP writing that helped me a lot. And so combining all of these through my own subjective lens was amazing for me. And this is how I dealt with those issues that I have identified back then.
Amazing. Thank you. That was such a full answer. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I hear a lot. I hear that you're an immigrant. I hear that you have a lot of interest in self-healing
Exactly.
practices. I hear that you were introduced to the holistic realm when you were 24. And how old are you now?
I am 33 now.
33. Fantastic. And how has your symptoms evolved since you've been in this field? And what is holistic therapies for you?
Right.
Because how did we meet?
We met because so my philosophy of life, I guess I can call it that now, is that there is not one type of therapy or one solution for everyone out there. I feel like it's a mix of awareness from different fields that everyone and every person that is different on this planet can pick and choose from whatever heals their soul in the most appropriate manner to them. And so, this is what holistic health means to me. It's taking bits and pieces of all the philosophies that are out there, of all the sciences that are out there, like Chinese medicine, somatics,
Ayurveda,
herbal
herbal,
therapy, exactly. And
acupuncture, osteo,
exactly, so
massage,
many.
psychology,
Mhm.
physiotherapy, kinesiology. I
Yeah.
mean, just name it, right?
Exactly. And so I like to try each and every one of those methods and just apply whatever feels good to my soul.
Amazing.
Yes.
And how have the symptoms shifted since then? What are the few therapies that you've stuck with and that have
hmm
really made an impact for you?
So, my main one and the one that I started with was nutrition. So, when I was 24, I um, changed the way that I ate dramatically. And I started following this blood type diet. So, I'm a B positive, and just not to get into too much detail, blood type diet is about what foods are superfoods or neutral or to be avoided for your specific blood type. Because each of the blood types originated in different areas of the world and they have their signature characteristics. And so I did that. And now I have a PDF with a list of foods from every category that I see are beneficial for me, and I try to stick to them. Of course, I'm not 100% following it. Sometimes I cheat because there are times of the month where my body is craving different things and I'm not being judgmental towards myself. And, I sometimes splurge. But as a rule, I follow that. And since then, the inflammation in my body drastically took a fall.
Decrease.
Decreased, exactly. And as that happened, I started noticing that my skin looked better, my periods were less hurtful, I would be less swollen, my mood was better, I had bigger energy levels. What else? I could perform better since my energy was better.
Sleep,
My sleep improved. Um,
your focus.
Everything started shifting since I addressed my nutrition. So that was a big chunk.
Yeah, because they say that the gut is the first brain and
hmm
that the brain is the second. So yeah, I totally
Yeah.
see that. Wonderful. And how has it evolved since then?
So since then, I started being more interested into okay, now that I am more grounded in my body and the 3D, right? What can I do for my soul and my mind to get them to the most authentic and natural and clean version of themselves, if I may? And so I started working with a coach who does NLP, and a big part of that was talk therapy, but also writing. And this is when I realized that writing, I used to do it before, but it didn't really click that it was therapeutical to me until I started writing with Melissa, who is my coach. And so, yeah, I think writing changed a big part of my healing journey.
We feel the shift when we write, when we
hmm
allow ourselves enough time to write, even if it's just our gratitude, and even if it's just half a page, but to make the point of actually writing every day or every few days our thoughts and our emotions and And just making that brain dump actually really feels good, right?
It
Feels good, and
does. Mhm.
that obviously is doing something to our nervous system.
Exactly. Writing helps with emotional and cognitive regulation. So the only the action of naming your emotions reduces the amygdala activity and helps manage stress.
And
Mm,
to be able to write enough to be able to come to the conclusion of that emotion that's
exactly.
bothering you
Because
is already a great first step.
so taking the break of writing down, okay, I'm going through this, I feel like this, what is the emotion behind it, is already therapy enough. Writing also helps supports trauma processing by organizing memories into coherent narratives, and it can help reduce PTSD symptoms. It enhances clarity, working memory, and problem solving. About stress and mental health, it has been proven that writing lowers cortisol and blood pressure, and it decreases rumination and depressive symptoms. Because gratitude journaling, and I think most of the people are aware of what gratitude journaling is by now, it does boost optimism. Writing is also linked to stronger immune responses and fewer doctor visits and even faster wound healing. It improves sleep quality, especially when focused on gratitude. Um, and what is amazing about writing in the terms of self awareness and personal growth is that it reveals thought and behavior patterns, it fosters meaning making, and it supports personal development. It encourages empathy and perspective taking, and it's reducing conflict and increasing feelings of connection. And I would like to link that to our workshop because the whole purpose of the workshop that's coming up is to cultivate connection to oneself through somatics and through writing, right? Writing about goals increases motivation, focus, and accountability. So, thinking of doing something and actually taking the step to writing it down are two different things.
I kind of end up procrastinating. Like if I was scared of what was going to come out,
Right.
or I didn't want to put the time to sit down and just write it because it's in my head, right? So what's the point? A lot of people out
Exactly.
there are saying to themselves, what's the point? It's in my head. I experienced it. I was there. Why should I write? What would you say to that?
I would say that as long as what's in your head hasn't been embodied, it might stay in your head for a longer time. So, if I'm going to talk about myself in this example, if I'm thinking of doing something and I'm not actually feeling the emotion that that activity would bring to me, if I'm not putting it down on paper and allowing my body to fully feel what is that going to bring me? How will I feel the moment that I do this? How am I feeling the moment that I'm doing this workshop with Sarah versus I'm thinking of organizing this workshop with Sarah? Those are two different things. When it's in my head, it's a concept. When I feel it in my body and I take time to write it down, it's already taking action. It's already molded. It's already existing. It's not a concept anymore. It's a choice, and putting it down on paper makes me accountable for it. So it's
Mm.
easier for me when I feel it in my body to actually bringing it to life, you know?
I appreciate that. I find that it really helps me make sense of certain things that I can't make sense of, and sometimes it just doesn't need to make sense. You just need to get it out of your system and have a space to release. And so I know a lot of people that I see and that I receive, my clients, and all of these people have wonderful people that they love, but very often people don't have somebody to talk to share their most
Mhm.
intimate thoughts with. And writing is a beautiful way to approach that. And I think once we start approaching that concept of, let me talk to me or my best friend or my inner being or my higher self, then the conversation changes. It's like when a good question is asked, right? All of a sudden, the brain is flooded with ideas and you want to say everything all at the same time, and the conversation could keep going. If there's no curiosity in the experience and in the description or the expression of that experience, then there's a lack of sharing and a lack of explaining to yourself or allowing what it is that needs to come out to
To just exist.
exist,
Sometimes we
be.
just toss the thought is coming, the thoughts are really fast, right? I can have like 1,000 thoughts a minute. And we often tend to just toss them aside because, like you said earlier, I'm going to deal with this later. And I'm going to ask you something. Do you feel like sometimes the same thought comes back to you over and over again?
Yeah, of course, all the time.
Right. And so if you were to put that thought on paper, I'm guessing you've already done this, even if you're resisting writing, sometimes you just gotta do it. You feel like it's the only way to get it out. The moment that you put that thought on paper and you just leave it there for a day, 2 days, a week, a month, do you feel like when you go back to what you're writing, you have a different perspective? The you from the future has a different perspective on the you that was living that thought and that emotion when you wrote it down?
Yes. And very often I find that in my experience, I've discovered an insight or a lesson or wisdom that I had not seen previously.
Exactly. But you took the time to put it on paper. And the thing with writing is that it might seem like nothing, but the time that you take from for your thought to come out of your brain and go through your body and through your hand and through the pen and then to be put on paper is allowing your nervous system enough time to completely sit with that emotion that's coming up behind the thought. And so the processing of the thought and of the emotion already starts the moment that you pick up your pen and you put it on paper.
Mhm.
And it might not get like the issue might not be resolved the moment that you write, but when you go back to it later, you just start to realize that this process unconsciously has happened by itself. And it doesn't take you more effort than that to process the actual emotion, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's an integration time as well. There's an integration time once it's in a thought in my mind and I keep it in my mind instead of feeling it in my body, and feeling it in my body allows me to reconnect to the emotion that's being triggered, and that emotion sends a flood of information throughout my body in reaction,
Right.
right? Reaction, whether I act on it or not in the moment of that emotion, will guide where I'm going
Right. And
in that
it's
relationship
gonna
or
stay with you
right.
because it hasn't been
It
transmuted, right?
right, exactly. Exactly. And it's like that animal that shakes off after he'd
Hmm.
gotten chased. Well, he's shaking off not because he knows what's going on, but because his body just naturally needs to release that fear, that fight or flight to
Right.
be able to continue his day and go on having the next meal, right? You're not eating when you're running from a saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly.
You can't go to the bathroom, and if you do go to the bathroom because you're so scared about something and you need to run, it's just your nervous system letting go of things that your body does not need to be in control of, and so that you can just, woo, on all fours, just go as fast as you can, do whatever it you can. But the unfortunate issue is that we are in a world where everything has been pushing towards us feeling like saber-toothed tigers are attacking us, yet it's just the other ding and notification on your phone all of a sudden,
Right.
or the extra email, junk email that you receive, or the extra, or that one conversation that you don't want to reply to because it's just so complex, or
Right. You might.
think it's complex. But once you start writing about it, even though you might release a lot of the pent up energy and emotion, which is fantastic, but you also start writing a different word than what you're thinking. Because by the time the information from your brain comes to your hand cannot catch up. And
Right.
so the words change, the phrases change, the sentences becomes paragraph, and the paragraphs become witnessing to your experience. And that experience being witnessed even on paper can allow us a feeling of relief inside, which calms down our nervous system, and our emotion kind of eases out, and the heart palpitation and, all of that just kind of says, okay, I could take a chill pill and go and take a nap.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the concept that you just addressed of fight or flight because I'm hearing this a lot. I don't have time to write. It's as if we are so busy running around all day that we might have the impression that slowing down and writing or resting or doing some yoga or some stretching is counterproductive because we don't have time. We just don't have time for anything. So how can I have time to just sit for 15 minutes and write?
And what about it's not enough? 15 minutes is not enough for
Exactly.
everything
Says
that's going
who,
on.
right? If you haven't tried it, how do you know? And so I'm here to attest from my own experience that taking those 10 to 15 minutes to write is so productive because your nervous system gets out of those 15 minutes a lot calmer. And so when you have a calm nervous system, even if it's not 100% regulated, your mental clarity is so superior that you will be able to go back to your daily tasks and do them in a much more efficient manner. So those 15 minutes bring you a huge ROI on your energy levels, on your nervous system, on the clarity of your mind, and all of the other benefits that I mentioned earlier, right?
And the wonderful thing is that when you're calmer, what happens to me? What happens to everybody around you? It creates a ripple effect that passes on that same calm or that same neutrality sometimes towards situations that don't need all of that attention and all of that emotion to be stirred up, right?
Right,
It kind
exactly.
of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of disengages the thought instead of it rolling into a ball of a clusterfuck of bullshit that's
Right,
going down a mountain that's becoming an avalanche all of a sudden. Holy shit, I've got to run faster. You let it be just the mole that disappears.
exactly. Thoughts have the consequences that we allow them to have, right?
And they have the consequences that we allow them to have depending on the value and the connection that we have towards those thoughts or those emotions. An emotion could come up and they're all valid, but not all of them are worthy of spending all of your energy and effort trying to understand them. They're
Mhm.
there to guide you in your body to allow yourself to react and respond to some situation. Feelings are a different story. So just to give you a little, maybe a side note, emotions are automatic and physical biochemical responses in the body to stimuli, when feelings are conscious, subjective, and mental interpretations or labels that we give to those physical changes and thoughts. So, and just to say, please don't give all of your attention to these. These are just clues and guides towards where your boundaries are broken, where you haven't been seen, heard, witnessed, where you need to understand where you stand. Sometimes we don't know where we stand, right? And that confusion kind of creates a discomfort inside. Thank you so much for that. So, other than writing, which is fascinating, and I'm so excited to get into the details of the theories and the practices in our workshop, can you just give us a couple of different ways that people can writing if they've never done it? If they want to try it at home and they've never done it, and like, what do I write about? I've got a pen, I've got a paper, I sat
Mhm.
down, I finally listened to the nth person that is talking about writing be good for my nervous system. What do I write about? What can we start that's really good?
The first trick that I give people is don't think about it too much because the whole point is to get out of your head and into your body. And so just start writing whatever comes up. If you don't know what to write, just write, I have no idea what the fuck I'm writing right now. And then as you continue on that, you will see that your brain and your body will automatically come up with things that they want to release on the paper. And you'll find yourself at the end of the 10, 15, 20, 30-minute session of writing that, wait a minute, how did I get here? You're almost not even conscious about what was going on anymore because your subconscious took the wheel at some point. right?
Mhm.
So just start by writing. I have no idea what I want to write about.
And what if we have just a couple of minutes before bed or
Hmm.
early in the morning? Can we do some writing? Does that count?
There's gratitude work. That's a big part of what I started with when I did NLP. So in the morning or at night before going to sleep, you just write maybe 5, maybe 10 things that you're grateful for. And that already switches the nervous system, and the stress hormones that you have are going down because you focus on what you're grateful for instead of all the other issues and thoughts that run around in your head daily. So it can be simple things like, I am grateful to have a roof above my head. I am grateful for having found a car to come to Sarah's this morning when I had no idea how I was going to get here, right? I'm grateful for having clean water to drink, electricity in my house. Really, I'm grateful for having woken up this morning, right? Because even that is not guaranteed. And we take so many things for granted in all of this fast-paced society that we live in, that slowing down and finding things to be grateful for is already therapeutical enough.
Hmm. And it brings us to our enoughness, right? It brings us to our enoughness. And I do have a lot of things to be grateful for, and I
Right.
have enough. And being in gratitude and abundance always brings more abundance. And it allows us to remember to come back to ourselves.
Right, exactly. And the thing about gratitude work is the goal is to shift your focus from what you lack to what you have. But what's also more important is the embodiment piece, which while you do gratitude journaling, you reflect on the feelings associated with the things that you're grateful for. And so this makes your experience more impactful because it brings you to cultivating an emotion that's positive, and it floods your system with the happy hormones versus the cortisol and like the unhappy hormones that you've been cultivating while you were running around all day, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Does it make a difference if the person is writing by hand or on their phone or on a computer?
I feel like, and I don't have the studies with me right now, but I have read this, writing by hand engages your body differently. And so it helps with the embodiment part of this whole therapy session, right? We have access to information. We can read the Gabor Mate book or like Tony Robbins or whoever is out
Bruce
there.
Lipton and Joe Dispenza, Mel
Exactly.
Robbins, Brene Brown,
Jay Shetty,
Jay Shetty, all of the great names,
all of the
Deb
theory.
Amanda Blake, like we could read them all, but what happens? All that knowledge.
It still gets into your brain, and not a lot of people take time or know how to integrate that into their lives. So having the knowledge versus embodying the knowledge and making changes and being committed to practicing that each and every day are two different things. And I think the real challenge is not to have the information. I know many NLP practitioners, coaches, therapists, and people who work in the health and wellness industry who have the knowledge. Are they consistent and good at embodying said knowledge? Not always. And that is the challenging part.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, for me, writing came in at a very early age, where I could feel it in my body as I was handwriting that my fascia releases stuff. I feel lighter. My digestion is better. It's sometimes brought me to tears. And I felt so relieved after because the body needed to release that through crying or through shouting or through shaking.
I'd like to touch on how important writing is as well for achieving goals, and how some of the best speakers and trainers and researchers and teachers out there are all writing on a daily basis, because it's such a fantastic practice to keep us on our toes. So thank you so much for that little parenthesis of your experience in writing. And I know that we're going to be talking a little more about the theories and practices and the different ways of approaching writing, as
Exactly.
well as practicing the writing itself and creating a shared space at the end to be able to express, right?
Exactly.
Express what came up if we need to. So it's a very intimate space, and it's to allow people to share or not what has come up. And I believe that it's in those community safe spaces, non judgmental places that ourselves to maybe shine a little more light towards the cracks that have happened in our bodies so that we come to understanding, healing, releasing, relief, and so much more, and connection, because connection is part of that game, that connection between ourselves to others, and that connection between ourselves and the world outside of us.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
And so in the somatic practices and writing workshop, that's a workshop for mindful women. The goal is to create an intimate and safe space where we as women can experience the full range of our emotions and also, like you said earlier, sharing with others, because that's also an important part, I think, of letting it out and hearing my own voice while I talk about some things that might be difficult for me. I think it shifts my perspective because we all have that inside voice that talks to us, sometimes in a nice way, sometimes in a not so nice way. But hearing us out loud is a different thing. And I think it's a game changer.
Indeed. Um, Hearing out loud, saying it out loud, using our voice, using that expression that we often close down, and all those words that we eat up and we digest and maybe not
Maybe not.
digest.
Yeah,
That's
that's
why
it.
your gut is upset all the time and
Yeah.
your lower back is pulling, and all of that, right? So, and I love the fact that you brought the body, because this workshop is not only about writing, but it's about reconnecting to our body. I will be guiding a part where we're going to be talking about the lymph and understanding the lymph of the body and what it does for us, as well as the vagus nerve. And we're going to learn how to tone the vagus nerve and how to clear the lymph or help our lymph clear for better sleep, for better healing, for less inflammation, for less pain and suffering. And the vagus nerve is the nerve that connects to basically the most important organs of our bodies through the head all the way down to our gut, and is super important to be toned. So when you sing, when you dance, when you breathe, when you express, when you use your vocal cords, when you
The throat chakra,
sing, and
right?
right,
Mm-hmm.
it really enhances the tone of that vagus nerve and helps regulate your nervous system. So if the vagus nerve is a little too tight or a little too strung out, it can create digestive issues, feelings of emotions that are unwanted, as well as creating these stories in our mind, because there's a disconnect from the bottom of the body to the top of the body, and the energy gets stuck up at the top of the body. So
Right.
we'd come and allow ourselves to learn how to bring that energy down and ground ourselves. And we also come into learning what breathing really is and why is it that everybody talks about breathing? How is it that we are not breathing already? Like,
Right. Because it
what's the
seems
point?
impossible, right?
Yeah.
If I'm alive, it means I'm breathing.
Right. But there are ways of
Yeah.
breathing that can really help us in our performance and in our relaxation. So, we're going to learn a little bit more about that. And we're going to learn a little bit about finding our center of gravity through proper tools to help our feet get information. And our feet are the one thing that are connecting us to the earth, that's connecting us to our external world
Mm-hmm.
directly, other than our eyes, and the skin that's connected to the air. The feet are powerful. So,
Because they're grounding us.
mm,
They're literally on the ground.
and so bringing that grounding through the feet into the body, tracking those different diaphragms. We're going to be doing a little bit of that with that writing. It's coming up. I'm looking forward to seeing you all. I'm looking forward to working with you,
Me
Oana. This is
too.
exciting. This will eventually develop to bigger and brighter things, and maybe even a retreat.
Yeah.
Just saying it now, saying it into existence. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. It's always a little odd to get onto a podcast. Well, we don't know what we're really going to be talking about, so I appreciate your patience with me. I just find it goes a lot better and there's more flow. And I thank you, listener, for having taken the time to come on and take us on your walk, on your drive, and in your mind for a little bit of healing and maybe some insight. I wish you a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and talk to you soon. Bye.